Well. Welcome, Graham. Welcome to the Real Talk.
Rob, finally getting here to come and see your studio.
Oh, man.
It's such a pleasure to be here. It really is.
Thank you so much for coming in. As I said, just to go back, 2 years ago was the first time we met.
Yeah, I remember we saying this morning, This is only the second time we've met in person. But what an interesting observation that we built this digital virtual relationship over the last couple of times since we first met at an ERA conference, right?
It's unbelievable how the world has changed in the industry of digital. As I said, the pandemic was when we walked into, because we met right before we went to full lockdown.
Exactly.
It was end of February of 2020.
It was days before the lockdown began. But I think it sort of goes to show, I think it's a good indicator that, you can build a virtual relation. You can build a digital-based relationship, because I feel like we've known each other for a lot longer than 2 years, put it that way, So, for building relationships with customers, you don't have to go to see them to make it happen.
No, you don't have to. And we've really learned that because as I said, the resiliency that we have with the technology that we do. Again, this technology wasn't revolutionary. It's been around for 5-6 years. FaceTime, all the things we had. It's
always there.
We weren't using it to its potential. And as I said, the pandemic, 2020 was the start of the technology revolution for everything in the world of how we went into it. I know we all talked about pivoting, changing, shifting, all these words we use to get into that process. But we're 2 years out, basically almost 2 years, and the world has really changed. Our businesses have changed.
You know the phrase, need is the mother of invention. The technology was always there. We just had to figure out how to use it.
How to use the need and bring it bring it to surface and utilize it to potential. But what is the world that's changed? And you come here from Lectrix. Again, can you tell a little bit about exactly what Lectrix does and your little background about you?
Yeah, sure. I know but maybe some of your viewers don't. So Lectrix is a digital marketing agency for the electronics industry. That's all we do. We don't work for anybody outside of electronics, and our claim to fame is that we turn marketing into customers. Yep. Simple as that. We're very measurement based, very data based, very ROI focused. That's really what Lectrix does. Yeah,
I can say is from the point we met. Going back to that, what you guys do is, remember we met. You were putting on a breakout session at ERA.
Right. That's
and
right.
I was in the audience with a bunch of other, salespeople and executives and people in there, and I had a question for you. And then you came to me and you remembered me, and you're like, "You're Rob Tavi." You're like, and then you told everybody, because I didn't know, because remember I created a video.
Yes, now I remember.
And
your memory's better than mine.
Yeah, you're right. And you're like, "You're Rob Tavi." And you're like, everybody in this room, because you're going about, social media and presence and LinkedIn and process. You were going over that. That was just the start of your presentation to tell everybody how to be more socially forward, building a brand in that process. So that was just.
I remember now. You had produced a very short 30-second video. It was your first visit to the ERA conference, and you did such a great job of just letting people know you were there, being welcoming, very authentic. And I saw this video on my LinkedIn feed because I think ERA shared it. I didn't know you at the time, so you weren't in my LinkedIn feed. And I was like, hey, now that's the way to get to know people digitally. Yeah. And you did it.
Hey,
so when you sat in the audience, I knew exactly who you were.
I look back, I'm like, again, for coming over some of that fear, because again, we get uncomfortable in some of those things. And that was my era of 2019, 2020 to try to get more digital, because, a lot of my friends, from how that came, a lot of people I knew, or my ecosystem, I go, like, you travel over the world, you see all these places and countries and factories. Why don't you put it on video? Why don't you show people what you do? Like kind of vlogging, the vlog. I'm like, I'm not a vlogger, but I'm like, okay. But I started doing it and getting comfortable as everything is like the camera I was so intimidated by it, looking into it.
I was visiting a client earlier this morning here in Southern California, Rob, and the VP of marketing had this great phrase. He said, "We have so many great stories untold." Mm-hmm. We all have them. You've got travel stories. Everybody's got some kind of story that's untold. And all these tools are here now available to us. Tell your story, man. We can all do it. And it's such a great way to break the ice with a customer or get the awareness out of your capabilities, whatever the goal is.
you nailed it right there, because that's how the Real Talk started, because everybody has a story. It just needs to be told. And that's what my objective was in the beginning, is to do 70%, industry, 30% lifestyle, and other things that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And I've done probably over 50 plus of actual long form podcast, which
really?
Yeah. And we've produced them and done it. And it's like reading 50 books.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much, and I've built relationships, and through the process of understanding what to do, and also it helped me guide myself and also leading a company to what we're doing in the future, because we learn from we take something from each guest I bring on, and it's been very fascinating.
Well, that's what I like about your Real Talk show. I mean, it was still is very innovative. Nobody in the industry was doing this. But in one of these 15, 20-minute shows, exactly the way you put it, I feel like I've just read a book. Like, okay, there's a nugget there I can take away, I can apply that, I can do something with it. I'm a slow reader. How about you, Rob? But it takes me weeks to read books.
Well, it comes because I kind of have ADD or ADHD. Like, I can read 2 pages sometimes and my mind's somewhere else. And then how to keep focused on it, And I have some weaknesses, but those weaknesses I turn into strengths and somehow turn it back of how I can use that energy into process. And the video has really allowed me to connect with more people. Again, we're talking about the connection. In the last 2 years, I've connected with more people in the last 2 years than I have in the last 5 years.
I have no doubt. I'm sure you have.
And just
this
by
show's really taken off.
Yeah, just by touching them and reaching out, and again, having humility and just being yourself. I'm not here to sell anything. I'm here just to elaborate, have deep discussion about what topics are, what's happening in the industry, what's going on, and how can we share and collaborate together to make a better ecosystem of electronics components, distribution, manufacturing, and supply chain.
Yeah, I know. I've watched multiples of these shows. I don't know if I watched all 50, but I watched a lot of them. And I always know that now that I've watched, a dozen, 20 of them probably, I know I'm going to come away with that one nugget. Like, this is going to be worth my 20 minutes. Yeah. I'm going to get something out of Rob's show. Always do. Always do.
So, I want to jump back to the last 2 years. I mean, of course, you are a foot soldier, front store of all the marketing digitalization that's happening with your customers. I mean, you're one of the leading companies in our industry. And really, what have you seen? I want to get from your firsthand experience, what has transitioned? What have you seen in industry in the last 2 years?
Yeah. Well, I knew you were going to ask me this question, Rob. So, the flip side of digital is I still have a paper side of me. I don't know if the camera can see my notebook. So I find flying times, as I was coming from Philadelphia over to the West Coast this week, sat down, 1-page stream of consciousness notes, and it really made me realize what we have seen in the last 2 years. Of course, it's all driven by the pandemic. And so I came up with 5 key things I've seen that maybe you've not noticed. Okay, everybody has noticed that we've doing a lot more Zoom meetings. That's very obvious. But I thought about 4 or 5 things which are maybe still a little under the radar for some people. Some of them are trends, and hopefully I can illuminate on those. So we can go through these 5 things. I knew you were going to ask me the question.
Let's rock and roll.
Right.
As I said, my curiosity leads me, and I love to be curious to what you say, because I know there's an underlying processes that some people don't see, because you deep dive into the data. You dive into data and you analyze it, which allows you to see different perspectives that the standard surface level, macro level should allow you to see.
Well, Lectrix has about 15 to 20 clients right now. So we're seeing real time every single day what's happening in the front line for these largely component manufacturers. One of the most recent ones, if we go for number 1, is I'm sort of calling this a shift to this real-time virtual relationship. Not just the Zoom meeting, which is 60 minutes and done. I'm talking 24/7, like round the clock. And one of the tools that's facilitating this is Microsoft Teams. Yeah. And you can do it in lots of other platforms. So I'll give you an example. So we have a bunch of clients, okay? As we're developing marketing plans with them, and you can take that idea and sort of translate that into the component world. Let's say your application engineer is working with a customer's design engineer. Instead of there just being these series of meetings which begin and end, we're now using Microsoft Teams, for example, to create a real-time instant message-based chat thread, which has proved enormously powerful because it allows, for example, people who can't make every meeting to catch up on what's being said. it allows the team on both sides, this whole idea of collaboration, which has become so valuable, to store information like, oh, I found a video that supports the design that we're working on, or I found this document, or I found these statistics. It all gets shared. Or even after the Zoom meeting is over or the Teams meeting is over, the design engineer said, remembers something, wants to share it with the team, and this thread is just ongoing. It's just very, very collaborative process. It's 24/7, and it just creates a much more richer relationship, and the end results are so much better because we're capturing everything, not just what you get out of a 60-minute Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting. So number one, I'd say, is this shift to this real-time virtual relationships, and that's growing now.
Yeah, I mean, I got to give a kudos to Microsoft for creating, and I just said it's enhanced that system so well to allow for more collaboration, not just internally, but externally. It has features and process, just like you say, you're doing webinars or a process, you can record them, you can cut them up, you can do surveys between it, you can do all types of things that's allowed us to have more collaboration with the parties, with your clients, with internal team members, external, everything we want to do. And it's really allowed us to actually be more forward thinking.
Yeah, and it makes it much more of a transparent process as well. It's, the Zoom meeting is great, it creates focus, that's good. But, sometimes we solve problems when we're not thinking about it. And you go, wait, I just thought of something. Well, that's probably not going to happen in the middle of a Zoom meeting, right? Like, I'm going to go to the thread, and in this thread group, of course, you're going to have your team and the customer's team. And it just gets captured. It's like, I thought of this, I just want to get it down on paper, virtual paper, right? And then we'll come back to it at some later point. It's a great way to capture the best of the conversations.
I 100% agree, because again, I mean, I can break down the fundamentals. I think it first started with Slack. Give it to Slack. Slack actually started that type of collaboration. It did. Teams, Microsoft, the competition came in.
Exactly.
And but overall, I agree, because you can keep history. You have notes. You just, like you say, sometimes you don't think of everything, and that collaboration, because that channel it could last forever, and you can always build on top of it and reference to it and go back with those interested parties to work on coming to a solution or possible solutions for their, to get the end result.
Yeah, it is, without a doubt. The second thing I've noticed is the word is omni-channel, one word. If you Google the word omni-channel, you're going to find the word marketing attached to it, most likely. By omni-channel, we just mean lots of channels, lots of means and mediums to get to the customer. And the pandemic sort of created this trend. What I'm talking about is I'm seeing brands now adopt marketing strategies which reach out to the customer in more than just one way, more than just email or more than just phone calls.
There's more touch points, as you would say.
Lots more touch points. So omni-channel means multiple channels, okay? So if I'm looking at my notes here, what I'm seeing is clients now, they're still using email, but email's gotten overblown during the pandemic because people weren't traveling and they relied on it too much. Yes, you've got the virtual meetings, LinkedIn messaging. I use LinkedIn messaging just to get a quick answer from somebody. I might wait 3 days.
Well, that's how we got this going, because I know you probably sent an email. I got somewhere and you just shot me a LinkedIn message, and I'm like, hey, Graham, you got it. Then I realized, he did send me an email. I never really didn't see it because we get bombarded. We're inundated with emails.
I'd forgotten. Perfect example. Go back to the Teams instant message thread. That's another form of omni-channel. Lots more content posting. So brands are taking this omni-channel approach, which is great. It's the only way you're going to break through the noise. You've got to be present in multiple places for the customer to even recognize that you're there. So that's a very much a pandemic trend that's still growing.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. It's funny you say Omni, because there's also now is the Omniverse, which is NVIDIA is going with the Omni Metaverse. But Omni is this term now that's coming out, the Omni-channel, the marketing, because there's multiple, it's multifaceted. It's multiple heads in the process of the touch points you do between the marketing side. And I agree. Today, it's all about building brand and awareness than just selling.
Totally.
Building awareness of building credibility, thought leadership, sharing content, because we can, like I said, LinkedIn is where our ecosystem lives, and where it's not really on the social media side. We could be there, but it's really where we live. But you don't want to keep pushing, as I said, there's a formula. You don't want to keep pushing basic sales content. You want to also put awareness stuff. things that interest you, because we're all human, and everybody out there likes to do business with humans, not with a digital format. So you can post some personal stuff or some achievements or some things, because that builds credibility, reputability, and people remember stuff like subconsciously. Because if you post something that you accomplished something, or something, have family, their company did something, our next conversation we might have is like, hey, Graham, I saw you posted that. It creates conversation. But again, that conversation could lead to opportunity. Right. You never know. Simple conversation. It's as you say, it's multifaceted marketing. In sales marketing is so multifaceted, and they're so connected today than ever, because again, back in the traditional ways, marketing was its own department and sales, and somehow they had to coordinate, and
they had to come together.
Together, and today they are more together than ever.
Well, one of the other benefits of this omni-channel strategy approach that's really emerging quite strongly now is back to what you're saying about human. If you think about it, let's say you've got email, text, voice, phone calls, in-person, social media. Those are like 6 of the major pieces of an omni-channel strategy. You might not be a big email guy, Rob, and the fact that you missed my first email tells me that you're not a big email guy, but you're clearly a big LinkedIn guy because you did respond. So if you're reaching out to half a dozen stakeholders at company X, they're not all going to respond to email. Yeah. You've got to have this omni-channel approach because people have preferences, and it's just human nature. So that's the other aspect of the omni-channel approach that's emerging.
I 100% agree, because you're building that, and just like you mean, there's a lot, because amazing how many touch points there are. But that touch points for any company or any person, because companies, there's a brand, but the personal is a brand too, is to build that brand and awareness and subconsciously be in people's mind when you have an issue or a product that they can help with. And that's because back in the traditional ways, these companies buy billboards, buy wall space, buy everything. Why? Because subconsciously you keep saying Coca-Cola or Pepsi, whatever it is, these things, Samsung or whatever it is. You see it everywhere. So subconsciously, when you want to go as a consumer to procure something, the first thing you say, oh, Coke, I see, it's just like some reason you want it because you see so much marketing for it.
Right.
And or you get curious about it because you want to learn more. What is this about? Or someone touches you. So it's funny is how that traditional marketing has morphed into what it is today, that it is so like this omni-channel that we're correcting, that we're just subconsciously implanting seeds all the way around.
Well, the other one that I missed in that frame of thought is sponsorship. You don't see sponsorship as much these days, and probably because people associate sponsorship with live events. That's probably why. But I see sponsorship coming back in a way virtually for exactly the reason you're saying, just the frequency of visibility of the name and the brand. And that's been missing, but I think that's probably going to come back.
Yeah, I feel like it's just going to improve. It's been more strategic. Again, we're much more data-centric than ever. So these data points we're going to measure of what is it improving, what interaction is there, who's touching it, we can read it all. And that's why this omni-channel, each one of these points, you can measure the inputs and outputs of it. So now
each one has measurability.
Each one has measurability. So we know what's working and what's not. And we know we can also sometimes track where that lead exactly came from. Because sometimes the hardest thing is people ask is, how did you find us? Or how did you find me? Or how did you get to me? We never sometimes ask that question. We get so far ahead of it, and sometimes I ask my salespeople, it's like, where does this lead come from? How is it generated? You ask this question. Where did they find us? Did they find us on Google? Did they find us on this platform or this platform? And these are some of the simple questions that sometimes we totally forget to ask.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, because there's a piece of research by Forrester, and if anybody wants it, I'll find it and send it to you. What they explain is it's the sum effect of being omni-channel that pushes the prospect over the tipping point of reaching out to you. So when you ask a customer, hey, how did you find us? And they say, oh, I filled in a form on your website. What they're not really answering your question. They're telling you how they contacted you, but they're not telling you all of the things that happened prior to that. I saw your sponsorship. I saw your advertising. I saw you on LinkedIn. You reached out to me over email. All of these things brought me to the point of filling out that form on your website. Omnichannel is the true definition of synergy. It's the sum of all parts creates the larger effect. And that's really the answer that we're trying to get from our customers. But most of the time, the answer you'll get is the last thing they did, not everything they saw.
Yeah, you're right. It's the journey they took.
Exactly.
And we asked about how did you find us? I find it, but what was the journey you took? And sometimes I've never asked anybody, what was the journey to find us? Sometimes you could do DNA search backwards to your websites. Okay,
Yes.
they went through this, and this, and they got here from this web address, for example. But that takes
and a lot of the time they won't remember.
They won't remember it, you know. So
it's tough.
It's tough to find it. But as I know yourself and your company, these are things I know you bring awareness to your clients.
Yep.
Of what we need to do. And what are some of the inputs for this omnichannel? When you present this omnichannel to them, what are some of the questions that they have? What are the things that we're already doing this, or we already do this. This doesn't work. How do you, go and educate them and enlighten them about some of this?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to clients' mind is, or if we're going to be doing a lot of everything, that sounds like it's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
So we sort of guide them into this idea of this is going to be more surgical than shotgun. Okay. There's still a strategy to it. It's not, the message is not, hey, do everything. Yeah. It's really understanding in a surgical way, where do your prospective customers hang out? Mm-hmm. So omnichannel, even if you break it down on the media side, they may be on LinkedIn, they may be on Reddit, they may be on Design Spark, they may be on any number of industry-related platforms and groups. So you've really got to sort of take the concept, but then bring it down to something that's manageable for their team, number one, and secondly, manageable within the budget. And once you sort of get down to the specifics, most people understand that the combined effect is better than any one, individual approach.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Again, some of the basics, a lot of companies weren't really marketing companies before, so they're really sales driven, right?
True.
So it's coming in and educating about the sales, and everybody wants to know about marketing. How do we digital marketing? How can we do this? How can we get this? I see this online, or this company's doing this, and give you examples. Can we do this? We want to be in front of this. But it's sometimes one thing it is for companies is the consistency wins. It's consistency, and it's not just training the salespeople to be consistent. It's also the whole management team that this is a long process. This is a journey we're getting into. You're not going to get maximum ROI tomorrow or next month. So it might take 3 to 6 months to sometimes a year of planning to start building that platform and that inroads of the I would say the funnel to start funneling in the exact, I would say, DNA of the customer you need, or the client or the consumer you need.
And sometimes that's a little difficult to accept when you're dealing with an engineering-based management team who really like things to be ones and zeros.
Yes.
We're saying it's a combined effect. It's going to take a long time. They're going to say, well, this sounds a little bit foggy to me, Graham. How's that going to look? So really the other way to do this is benchmarking. Yeah. So we say, look, trust us. We know this works. Let's put a baseline set of numbers down today. Let's set a milestone for 90 days, 180 days. And if we're right, you'll see this number move up X, Y, and Z. And then I think in an engineering world, which we live in, I think they become a little bit more accepting of like, okay, we can do this for 6 months. Yeah. We're not, as you said, we're not going to get to full ROI in maybe 3-6 months. That might be 12 or even 24 months. But you can plot milestones, and then it becomes a little bit more digestible and acceptable for the world we live in.
Yeah, that's the one thing. When you get to that's when I would break down, because I know you're probably face these challenges or these questions from your clients is, what's my ROI? Everything's about ROI. Like, what's my return on my investment, right?
Full
like,
ROI.
But sometimes you can't measure it, right? It sometimes can't be measured to the point that's the thing that people say with, I give it to my example is people are like, why do you do all this stuff? I'm like, yeah, I spread awareness. I do. It's not a sales, but I build awareness and branding at the same time, right? And that's there. I can't really indirectly measure the ROI, but again, I sometimes I get opportunities to sit at the table that I never did before. At the end of the day, I need to ask for opportunities. I need to, or a door opens that I've never seen, and I can sit there and say, hey, how are you guys doing? And introduce them, because I build brand awareness, I build credibility, people know me, I do share information about myself, and I have humility to say I'm not perfect. I am who I am. Right. But you become likable, and it's easy to get into the conversation.
Like I said, 2 years ago when you started this. Was it 2 years ago? When did Real Talk start?
Real Talk actually started in March. No, officially for the podcast didn't start till probably May of 2020. But my videos started in 19, and I actually did the video I did the video ERA too.
You did. Year and a half, 2 years. But so over that time, you've built this incredible awareness of Rob, the face of IBS, through this vehicle, Real Talk. And as you say, you probably can't point to one single thing that created a sale, but there are these benchmarks that you, I'm sure, can look at, which any of your viewers can do for their business. Is some of those benchmarks by just look at web traffic. In unique users per month. There's a good one. The other one that's really good to use is number of inbound sales inquiries. You know what? Most people are getting 5 a month, 5 a week, 5 a day, whatever the number is. Just write that baseline number and then try something out and then see what happens. Because that's probably when the first reactions are going to happen. It's going to happen on your website.
On their website, and also when salespeople prospect.
Right.
They saw content. We saw content that's something with IBS or something added. And these are things that you build brand, because every company should build that brand. You know, they should have a face of their video side or the face of process that it also builds up, because they're the new generation of how we go to market or how content is that people consume information is all digital. Video is very powerful today than more than ever, because consumer driven social apps have pushed B2B to be that way, because we're just sometimes a 30-second clip, that 1 minute clip, and we're in tune to it. You know, as I said, the TikTok effect in the world has completely revolutionized the world of instant gratification through video. And it's changed the market. I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole over there, but it also bleeds into B2B because our mindsets get that way. So we kind of want to learn information quickly, and it's fed to us instantly.
Well, speaking of the consumer bleeding into B2B, remind me when we get to the end to talk about the metaverse a little bit, because I've got a theory, but I want to go back to what you said about salespeople, because this is another trend where I've seen a distinct change in the last 18 months, and I refer to it as the rise of the application engineer. And it's a little bit scary if you're a salesperson, but not really, because it's really the rise of the application engineer versus the salesperson as who's having the conversation with the customer. And I've seen a trend here amongst half a dozen clients, and it's all been driven by Zoom, so it's all been driven by the pandemic, where the primary face of the customer, of the company in front of the customer, is becoming the application engineer, either not the salesperson or with the salesperson. So visualize this. I wish we did slides, and I can send them to you if you want. Pre-pandemic, here's how how's the communication happened between the component manufacturer and the customer. Salesperson gets on a plane, flies to city X, visits the customer, explores the opportunity, gets information, flies back, talks to the application engineering team. They kind of try to work out a solution. And really, it's linear. It's application engineer here, salesperson here, customer engineer here, right? You can visualize that. Zoom comes along, and that linear structure now becomes a circle, because now the application engineer is in the same Zoom meeting as the salesperson and the customer engineer. So I think that has been the impetus for this. And we're seeing clients now foster that opportunity where I want the application engineer in the meeting with the customer either as much as possible, or some CEOs have demanded all the time. And so the role of the salesperson is changing in this. And I've spoken to some salespeople, and they're a little worried about it. I don't think they need to be worried. I think they should be applauding it, because really what it allows them to do is bring more ammunition to the meeting, get to the purchase order faster, solve the customer's problem faster, just guide the process. You don't have to be the person that's relaying this information, old style, I would say, in that linear fashion. So application engineers are getting put into the trench now with the customer. But of course, I call this the DISC Connect. You know the personality testing system, DISC. So salespeople are usually high DIs. Engineers are usually high S's and C's. So I call it the DISC Connect, because they're two completely different sets of people. You put an engineer in a room with an engineer, they're going to talk turkey pretty fast. They're going to go straight into how to solve the problem. And the salesperson really needs to just kind of stand back a little bit and just let it take shape. So that's a distinct trend that's come out of this, which I'm seeing more and more manufacturers take advantage of. And it's a good thing.
I agree 100%, because from my traveling, it's funny as you put into perspective now, because I never even thought about it that way. And I'm actually, we'll get to what I've been doing currently, but say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, as I traveled to Asia a lot, the supply chain distribution manufacturing rep it's different structure there. They have a lot of agents and they have agents that are called reps that are reps, but the agents also can do distribution. But then there's massive there's big distributors. So the rep, there's not a lot of reps in Asia, so it's a different structure they have. But overall, when the reps or the agents come to our office to sell a certain product or try to introduce a product to us or whatever we want to do, they would always come in with an engineer. They always come with the FAE. The FAE is always with them. The salesperson will come in, prospects. The salesperson gets a prospect, comes in, brings the FAE. And 80 to 90% of the conversation, if it's engineer, it's all driven by the FAE.
Interesting.
And it's all driven for the especially if you're designing a product, going into it, the prospect, again, the salesperson opens up the door, and in my opinion, this is a real analogy, and lets the engineer walk in to present it, to be able to gain more, again, ask questions, open opportunity, because they use them as a weapon. It's all used as a weapon because it can create opportunity they've never known before. Because the salesperson might have one opportunity, but this engineer, as the weapon come in and understands what's going on and can present the component, they become the salesperson of the product. And they say, you know what? Oh, we also have these product lines that can fit these needs or solve these needs. And they can come out, one opportunity can turn into 5 on one project because of using the collaborating off of that, of the strategy that was due. And it's interesting that in Asia, a lot of it between China and Southeast Asia, this is traditional.
And you're talking pre-pandemic now,
This
Rob,
is
right?
pre-pandemic. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about the
years.
last 2 years. I'm talking about pre-pandemic because I couldn't travel to Asia. And as well as India. India is another, I would say, dynamic market itself because everybody's an engineer.
Right.
Everybody's an engineer. So when you don't hire salespeople, you hire engineering salespeople. Everybody, you can't, because everything's designed in. They don't come to product. You need to go talk technical. They won't talk to you if you don't know tech, because this is useless. You come to prospect, okay, here's my product.
Right.
Okay, here's all my questions. They're like, I don't know what to do because everybody's technical.
Well, you know that saying, Rob, you put 2 engineers in a room, you'll get 10 solutions.
Yeah, there it is, and that's what really happens. And India, actually, as I say, is that because all our team in India who are sales are engineers. They have to have an engineering background. They have to have the knowledge. Yes, there's some application-based, some basic components. There are more in depth, but they understand the language, the lingo, they understand the opportunity and what the function is, because also they have to relay back to the principal. The principals aren't involved as much as they are sometimes here to get involved, because sometimes the principals will send an FAE as well to help, or now today it's much more virtual. But that's really the market that was
interesting
in Asia compared to the state where now here, as you're seeing, it's moving to that moving from that traditional just sales person involved, and then bringing in the engineer at the maybe at halfway through the process, not at first entry. Right. So now you're seeing the model has shifted and it's evolved because also the customer has different needs. The customer has changed. The engineers' mentality of how they work and operate is complete, because they start directly with engineering questions. The relationship isn't so much there. It's like, okay, I have a problem to solve.
Well, the other aspect of this to think about is your typical, if there is such a thing, design engineer these days. He's a master of many mini projects. He's not really focused on just one particular thing, typically. Okay, so he's got to manage a lot of problems. So if you look at suppliers as the solvers of all of those problems that the design engineer is trying to work on, then your application engineer sort of really does need to become the face of the company. And what we're seeing now is a number of companies offer up the time and the resource and the skills of their application engineering team as a marketing campaign to get the conversation going with the customer. The application engineers, you'll see them if you look at some Lectrix campaigns. You'll see real people in the marketing campaigns, like almost saying like, this guy, this lady is available if you want to solve a resistive technology problem, a switch problem, a connector problem. We can custom design, we can do added value, all of this. They're actually featured in the campaigns.
That's because before there was just they
were background
people, and there were just there's shots they bought. They used images. They just use images of someone that's a business. But now you're right, because the human interaction and is much more powerful than just advertising off, just like commercial based. So everything, in my opinion, the dynamic has shifted. The world is changing of how interaction works and how services are rendered and given. of course, going into software, because I want to talk about this, we're getting into this, is that journey of engineering, the journey of the rep, the journey of the FAE, whoever it is. Software now can allow us to be much more organized than ever, because like for myself, our CRM system, we've built a pipeline that we can build the journey through data points. That, well, of course, there has to be an input, but there's a journey of the product, right? We go into a product for design. You know, we have the prospect, we have the meeting, we go through the process and what it is to create opportunities. But at that end is that data is allowing us to make better decisions and also have visibility to the whole team to discuss, hey, this is what we're providing. This is what we saw. Oh, whoa, we can do this and this. So you can actually have a collaboration, a brainstorm of not just the FAE that's there, or just of the whole pool of FAEs, or or your team that you might have more than one that can solve a problem for the customer, kind of indirectly, because everything's visible. You can have meetings.
Well, it goes back to the Microsoft Teams real-time thread that I was talking about at the very beginning.
Exactly.
That's a perfect example of it. You know, have them be connected in real time. They can talk whenever they want. They're collecting and saving the pieces of the final solution. It's all there. I mean, I know you and I have shared, you're making a big investment in marketing technology right now, right?
And the journey of our technology through, again, everybody talks about ERP, but it's not just ERP anymore, because everybody has a system that's transactions-based, or inventory management, but in finance, all this.
Yeah, I think it's what you do with it.
Yeah, it's what you do with it, but the ERP is just one piece of the puzzle now. You have to build a tech stack. Stack is, are you present? You have an online presence through, you have an online website. Do you have an e-commerce side of that? Mm-hmm. Do you have a product information management system, which is the PIM, which is much more important, because PIM has really been used more in the, I would say, consumer world, but PIM is but now in the electronics world, because we have an infinite amount of part numbers that win. I mean, there's billion SKUs. There's so much data out there. How can we always have all that proper information fed to us and put into the system? How can you have it clean and updated? How do we do it without having 10, 20, 30, 50 people just updating data every day?
That sounds like a blockchain thing to me.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. How do we update data? Because before we said the EDI systems and all this, but now with the technology, now we move to everything's app-based, API-based.
Right.
We're able to build infrastructure technology, of course, into the cloud, because compute has got the cost of compute for scalability has got much less. So you can store it in high-powered compute fashion with applications and building a platform. So for myself, I'm building this desk, my platform. Upon this platform, we're building technology to be able to communicate with each other, to eliminate touch points. Yep. Touch points of human interaction, which can cause error. The number one thing is we want to reduce the amount of error. Error is what causes everything. For bad data, it's garbage in, garbage out. You know, always. That's the process of. So for us, what we are doing is building a platform that can reduce the amount of error, the touch points. But again, it's funny is I can take this back, is I can have the most fanciest system. There's two things. You can build the system, but you also have to change a culture. People don't realize you can have you can have the Rolls Royce of Rolls Royce, but if you don't know how to really drive the thing or how to use its features, it's useless, really.
Or worse, if you have a team that's resistant to the change in technology, that's sometimes even worse than the training. If they're not on board before you make the investment, you're better rethink it.
And that's the biggest challenge I think a lot of companies have. Even we have internally in our global operations. There's a lot of people are resistant. If it doesn't work, let's not. Don't right now, because business is good for everybody, as we say. Business is good for everybody
right now.
But it is. I mean, it's not good. It's challenging at the same time. There's a lot of challenges right now in the supply chain and components that business is. But during this time, we have to invest. We have to build infrastructure for the future that will reap rewards when business also goes on a downturn. So that data infrastructure building is a tech stack. We're trying to build a process where we can remove the human interference of all those points of the customer journey. So I will give you a quick explanation. It's like our website. We build a website, request a quote. Request a quote comes in, it goes to a salesperson. Salesperson's like, we don't identify this partner, I don't know what it is. It's something just come out of nowhere, because some people just search us, find something. Is it part of our catalog? Is it here? We send it to procurement, product management. Okay, we do have this. This is part of our catalog. So we go for the sourcing, goes for the pricing, gets back. But this part number is actually not in our system, right? And it goes through this journey. So then it goes back to the salesperson. Salesperson quotes it through the system, and then gives it to the client. The client says, customer, PO comes in.
Yep.
But all these points right now are manual, right? Most companies do this really manually. Quote comes in, then maybe it forms an email form. That email then is forwarded through a CRM system or whatever system they use, forwarded to the salesperson. Salesperson goes, can put in a CRM system or can work out of their email, can work out of whatever it is, and it's sent to the buyer.
And unfortunately, every human touch point is an opportunity for error.
Right? So all these have errors, and the data is not clean because you can, there's not formulas, things to fill out. So my whole goal is to automate this process. So, and the biggest challenge too for a company that has a lot of data is how do you make sure that, say, the part number, because for us, we're very part number heavy. Everything, product description, product EA, COO, all this information, where is it made, is very important today.
Right.
Very important than ever. Where does this data come from? How does it get into our system? So now, fortunately, there's a lot of, I would say, data warehouses that you can actually get data to connect through API that can do it. So before, we can put out, say, 100 quotes, but maybe 50 of those are not even in our system yet. We haven't transacted yet with those. So they're not in our ERP system. So if we want to do it manually, if we have 50 POs, we have to have somebody manually enter every single one of those into the system.
And that's a huge labor bill.
That's a huge labor. It's a lot of cost, and it can create error.
And a big error bill.
A big error bill, right? Create error, because if one nomenclature is wrong, if something is wrong, if a prefix, and sometimes the prefix and suffix, the suffixes off of some customers is different than others. It could be a T/R, like tape and reel, or TR. I mean, these simple things that can also cause on the customer side, like, oh, this is not what we ordered because this is robot. This is the same part. So you want to kind of match all of that. And how do you match it in the system? So if we could automate that system, that once that PO comes in and that quotation turns into a sales order, we can push that sales order into ERP system. At the same time, our PIM can push that right product information into our ERP system and populate it to be there. And at that point, there is a human interaction, approve or disapprove that this is correct, because it's not autonomous.
Right.
There are going to be touch points of humans to come in there to approve, but it's not about putting in data. It's about double checking this is approved, and yes, click, okay, shot through.
And how long do you think this project is going to take for IBS, Rob?
We've been in it for a year now.
How much time before you think you get to a point where you've got something you're ready to roll with?
I give the worst case end of 2022, best case in middle of 2022. But I always prepare for the worst, because we know how people have done it, especially doing it globally, releasing the stuff globally. Yep. There are pitfalls, there are challenges, there are issues that can arise, very costly. But again, we learn through this process, because again, some of the things that investment doesn't mean you're going to instant ROI. There could be failures in the investment. Sometimes in today's world, you have to don't have fear to pull the plug. Sometimes, we went down this hole, we spent all this money, but this is not going to get us there.
I've done it. It's horrible.
It's horrible. When you do it. But
it's smart when you know you've got to recognize it.
And then that investment, you learned a lesson, and you learned what the right formula is.
Yeah.
This is not going to work, because there's tools out there that we've chosen that we spend a lot of money, and they're like, I'll take full responsibility for it. I did choose it. We tried to imply it. It's not going to work.
Right.
But I think that humility, take over that humility again, to say, okay, this is not going to work, but we'll shift it. We learn from our mistakes. We're going to grow forward. And this day and age, everything's dynamic, right?
You got to try.
Yeah, you got to try, and we have to be dynamic to it.
And interestingly, you're not on your own in this Q4 of 2021. We're seeing a big trend here. This is probably of the trends I'm talking about today, the largest one, I would say, is the huge investment in marketing, and specifically marketing technology. Very different from even 6 months ago. So there's a lot of people in the industry doing exactly what you're doing, understanding that this is going to take time, this is going to cost money. But the current circumstances of the marketplace are what's driving it. This big spike in demand. We have clients reporting 49% bookings year over year, 72% bookings year over year. I've never seen numbers like that. I don't think any of us have. But a bunch of companies now are saying, okay, hold on a second. We're sitting on revenue that we've never seen before. We're always saying we can't afford to do stuff. Let's take this time. Let's do the marketing investment or the ERP investment, or hopefully a combination of the two. Let's build something that's going to give us a 3 to 5 year really good return on it. And the other really interesting switch in the marketing, and this has all been in the last 6 months, I would say, as companies come to the realization that this is a great opportunity to do something. The switch has been from what I would just call lead generation marketing. So where the company goals are, get me as many sales leads as you can, as quick as you can, that's kind of ground to a stop in many, many cases. And companies saying, I don't need leads. I can barely fulfill the business that we're quoting right now. What I really want to do is make a long-term marketing investment in strategy. So thankfully that's Lectrix. Like, help us figure out what does a 3-year marketing plan look like? Some of these companies have never had a 3-year marketing plan. What technology do we need to put in place that's going to support a sales team that's growing, an inside sales team that's growing, that can interface with our reps, that can interface with our distributors? What do we need to kind of get this figured out once and for all, or at least for that something would have a 3 to 5 year life? So seeing a lot of money going into that type of investment, long-term strategy, long-term marketing tech, and a lot less of the lead stuff.
And all of that has to do with two things. Is how do we have a shortage of skill set and manpower in a lot of companies, right? And it's to try to automate processes because we just don't have enough talent. We can't get it. And there's inflation process sometimes. So we can, unfortunately, say technology can replace some human interaction processes. Of course, the human to human you can never replace with a machine, but there are processes internally that you could automate, or you could build in technology that can help the process and give you better. Because again, a machine or a computer, because today there's a lot of machine learning, there's a lot of process. Your phone is intuitive. Your phone learns your behavior. Your phone listens to you. Your phone feeds you information.
I've noticed some interesting things in the last 48 hours traveling here with, hotel bookings appearing on my phone calendar and things like that. Yeah. It's all happening.
So all of this is anticipates, right? Anticipation. So this technology they're investing in is for the future, the process, but it is a 2-3 year road. You can't have it now. And of course, through the process, we learn, as I said, we've been in it a year. Why? Because we learn through the process. There's some things more we need. Because we start with what our goal is. Like we get that, we can't launch this next year because this is our constraint. But realize that technology is moving so fast, and the hardware is and the softwares are there, the hardware. But again, the problem is it's just like all this investment that's happening needs infrastructure. So we're in the business of supplying the hardware into the infrastructure to build those warehouses, data warehouses, cloud management, compute, or IoT connected devices that we can use. And that's why the demand is there, because there is a lot of companies a lot of cash out there, and people want to invest for the future because the future is not as uncertain, but they want to make sure that there's efficiencies in play when there was a downturn, that they can cope with it. They can cope with any type of, and also business continuity plans. Yep. That's something we forgot to mention is the pandemic. Is we went into a pandemic with not a lot of people had BCP plans. They didn't even realize what a BCP plan is, business continuity plan. They didn't have it in play. If we lost internet, we can't travel, we lost a warehouse, there was a freeze, there was a fire, there was a process. These are things that I think people forget about, that during the pandemic, we had a lot of other environmental and things that happen in the world.
And would those plans have worked anyway? Because I don't think we could have foreseen this.
Yeah, and now everybody knows that we have to have backup plans. We have to have infrastructure to help back it up. We have to have data warehouses. We have to have redundant warehouses, processes, and systems that if we need to go remote, we can. As I said, this is before in 2018 when we transferred to the Microsoft platforms. If we can't answer or touch 90% of the things on our phones or devices by hand, we're going to be behind.
No question.
And that's the number one thing is this effect that everybody wants it now. So from marketing aspect, what you do, from the sales side of what we get into, everything has to improve the speed. And the only way we do that is by data. It's by data.
Yeah, in this industry, it's what we thrive upon. But just to finish up, I said I would mention a bit of a bet I've got on the future.
Let's go there.
So you were just talking about the speed of technological change, the amount of investment that's pouring in. Did you see the article a month ago after Facebook renamed themselves Meta?
Yeah.
I forget the number. Was it 8 billion or 80 billion that they're going to invest in Europe in building the metaverse? I forget the number. It doesn't matter. We know it's big. So here's a little prediction I have is that I think one of the next big tech changes in sales and marketing in our industry will be the metaverse. So if you think about it, we've figured out in the last 2 years that one of the most successful strategies is to create collaboration between engineers. Okay, salespeople will be involved in that, but they won't be the intermediary. They'll be involved in it. Okay, so imagine you can create a metaverse environment where you have your design engineer customer and multiple supplier FAEs bringing their expertise, working together real time in a metaverse environment, designing everything that's on the board, everything that's in the device. And of course, now with a headset, you're seeing it in 3D, not 2D. And most of what we design is absolutely 3D, and most of the components that our friends sell are micro. They're this small. You're trying to understand, well, what is it in that component that actually is going to help me do something good? If you could blow it up to, something that appears to be the size of a soccer ball, you can have greater understanding of all the benefits of it. So I'm seeing in the future, and I'll leave it there right now, is that there will be a metaverse environment, a design engineering environment between customer engineers and FAEs.
I agree, and I'm a little biased on that because of the Omniverse, which now is NVIDIA.
Okay.
So why? I mean, NVIDIA, again, if you don't know, NVIDIA was one of the first to even say the metaverse. But of course, Facebook came out and says we're going to build this metaverse and this, but their marketing scheme and their plan was all about consumer and building an environment to visit animals and kids and things like this, right?
Yep.
But if you go into NVIDIA's platform, now they called it the Omniverse, which is part of the metaverse, they're building a platform to do simulation.
Okay.
Right?
So I learned something today.
To do simulation of processes, building smart cities, process, infrastructure, bridges, and they can quantify, run algorithms in smart cities of the product and engineering they're doing to make sure that's calculated for the risk, right? For risk where they're doing. So that comes to your engineering side. Okay. Building components, building engineering, building products and gadgets in this world, in this omniverse, metaverse, in this world that they can quantify the results much faster with using, again, it's machine learning too, because it's high output. I mean, people don't realize that the compute, when you're doing 1 petaflop, now it's 1 petaflop's nothing. You got to do, I don't even know how to get to how many zeros you're going to go to that point, but how many transactions per second to run algorithms. It's not just about infrastructure, it's about science. It's about life and what they can do to change our world we live in. Of course, it is a little scary because
I was just going to say, it's a little scary to think what it might be.
And that's where when the Facebook came out, and that world is scary to me because that comes into, because of course, NVIDIA is a gaming company that turned into a platform that's just not about, they've changed, revolutionized. Jensen his vision is unbelievable for that point. And if you guys haven't seen my podcast with the VP of AI of NVIDIA, it's very fascinating where they're going. And I'm actually doing another one with them to talk about the Omniverse and what's going on. But you can see that I look at it different because I guess Facebook's marketing to the children, the people, and why we changed the meta. But NVIDIA is building the platform to really revolutionize, change the way we operate and work.
So maybe they're going to be the guys to bring it.
Yeah, I think they're both going to be in the space because they're announcing it. But it's funny that they changed their name to a very generic term that was just used by everybody. But they changed their name to it to have that kind of IP. So now other companies kind of, when you use it, they have to license it off of them.
And remember, some of these environments are, fully immersive, 180 degrees. I saw that Nreal brought out a set of glasses yesterday that they're selling through Verizon for about $600. That's only 52 degrees, so it's sort of more of an augmented reality. It's a little less scary because you still have an awareness of the rest of the world around you. It's just more for a tool, and they actually talk there about it to be used in applications, not just for entertainment.
Yeah, because Facebook bought Oculus, I think 2015 or 14, 15, which is Palmer Luckey. He's a genius. I mean, I think he's actually has Unreal. They're building a headquarters here down the street for defense, like drone defense. Crazy. He's a... but they bought that. That's where the start of the metaverse started, when they bought Oculus to be able to do that three-dimensional world. And that's why they have the platform, they have the people, and they have a kind of a head start just from that virtual world because they've built it. But it is, I don't know if you've ever played in it. It's fun for about 10, 15 minutes, but it's not something that I don't know you live in because you lose kind of the sense of yourself kind of in it, because also if you put it on there, like you don't know where you are, you don't know the weight, your equilibrium shifts, you change, in the scary, there's negatives to it, but there's also positives that that world will help us be greater in planning and science and in technology than ever.
So maybe it'll all start here in Santa Ana, California.
Maybe next
down
time
the
we're
street
doing
from
this.
IBS.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Maybe next time we have one of these podcasts, we'll be in a metaverse having a live
through a
collaboration.
Who knows, Rob?
Well, very good. I mean, we can get into down rabbit holes for everything, but I'm really happy that you came here. Thank you for coming from the East Coast.
Pleasure,
Thank you for coming in. It's been great having you. Been discussing it. I know me and you can keep going and going, but we all have meetings. As you're here for a purpose, but I'm happy you're here to visit me, to see me, to come on the Real Talk, share your thought leadership, your knowledge.
Wouldn't have missed it for the world.
And and I'd love to. I guess we see you. Am I going to see you in Texas?
Yep, we'll be at ERA in Austin, Texas in February. Look forward to meeting lots of missed friends.
I'm probably bringing this whole setup over there. We look like we're going to set some things up so no one. Let's do it again. We're going to do some fun stuff as ERA. I'm like, we set up like college football. Everybody come in and have some fun. But I appreciate it. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Rob. Great to be here.